Now post-absorptive stage ends after we consume food. Okay, we consume food. But what if after this post-absorptive stage also, like the early time when you have started to starve, then after this also without consuming for 24 hours, okay, or let me say whole night you didn't have anything. Okay, now what I said, after post absorptive stage starts after several hours. Okay, like from 7 a.m. it started, and now in 2 p.m. it started. Now you will have something by the end of 4 p.m. then this stage is gonna end. But after 2 p.m. also post absorptive stage also, okay, this is what happens in the post absorptive stage. But in early starvation, what happens is that you will not have anything for at least 24 hours. It's just like a very strong, a very strict fasting. You are not having anything, and in this time what happens is your glucose starts to release and fatty acid mobilization from adipose tissue starts. So what happens here? Okay, let me just, so in the early starvation, the things that happens is um, glucose release and fatty acid mobilization from the adipose tissue. Now, in the early starvation, usually glucose start to release and fatty acid mobilization starts from the adipose tissue. So, because of this, usual people go for the early starvation. These heroines and everyone, and they get slimmed down after a month without even doing exercises, or even us whenever we are lacking food for a long time. Then during those times, these things happen. Glucose starts to release, fatty acid mobilization starts from the adipose tissue, which only leads to thinness in our body. We start to become thin. So this is what happens in the early starvation. Okay, now now glucose is released from the liver. Okay, from glycogen liver converts it into glucose, and it is released in our body during the early starvation. So this was the general scenario. Now the things become little critical. Okay, things become little critical. Think so now in the intermediate starvation, what happens is that the liver glycogen, okay, which was the main source for the glucose, is finished now. It is no more available. Previously liver was handling everything. Okay, I am there, I will handle everything. So it had handled post absorptive state to the early starvation. But now in the intermediate stage, what it says that okay, I am lacking glycogen. There is no the liver, there is a depletion of the glycogen in the liver. Now what happens is now since there is no glycogen, then other sources will be used to produce energy in the body. Other sources will be used to give energy to our cells, to our tissues, to our organs. And the other sources that now our clever liver and uses and our body uses are the uh, lipolysis and ketogenesis. Okay, see here. Which quantity you can see in the largest amount? This. And which you can see in the lowest amount is this. So obviously whenever we are starving, these are depleting. These fuel reserves are depleting. And the first one to deplete will be the glycogen. First one. Okay. So now let's cross it. Okay, when till the time we come to the intermediate stage, glycogen has raised its hand and said okay, I cannot handle the body now. Now lipolysis and ketogenesis starts taking place in the body. Okay, and somewhere liver, no, in the again although it is depleted, there is no lack of glucose in the liver, but still somewhere glucose neogenesis means glucose synthesis also taking place, but more than it there is lipolysis and ketogenesis. Lipolysis means breaking the fat to produce energy. Ketogenesis means from the proteins, from the amino acids, ketones are synthesized for the energy. Okay, for ketones are synthesized for the energy. Now, okay, now I think I will drop this. Now, it has been 60 hours of you starving without food. 60 hours. So, it was for few hours. Next one for 24 hours. And here is 60 hours. Okay, now you have been starving. As I said, glycogen store has almost depleted in liver, and now lipolysis and ketogenesis are running. So what happens is that these fuel reserves, they get emptied after 6 hours, and they just two three fourth. Okay, 3/4 of the fuel reserves now has already emptied in the body. It is already used by our body. 3/4 of the fuel reserves has already been used by the body. And if the starvation continues, this will again rise even more. Now, after the fat and protein that has been utilized more than 60 hours, and 3/4 of the energy has been utilized for our survivance, okay, what happens is that hydroxybutyrate hydroxy you I forgot the spelling of butyrate increases by, okay, first of all, after 60 hours, okay, it increases by 26 folds, and fatty acids production in the body increases by 3 folds, okay, and glucose has depleted by 30 percentage. This is the scenario. Okay, hydroxybutyrate, so protein when it is utilized, okay, then the first form, okay, after glucose, then when protein is being utilized, then it forms the hydroxybutyrate, which is increased by 26 folds. Fatty acids, from fat it is increased by 3 folds, and glucose is decreased by 30 percentage. Even after this, after 8 days, okay, of these chains, after 8 days of these chains, now this hydroxybutyrate increases by 50 folds, and fatty acid increases by 6 folds. Okay, and okay, the glucose, the level I said it has depleted, start using from early starvation, and from intermediate starvation it has decreased, okay, by 30 percentage, and this level of glucose remains constant in prolonged starvation as well as intermediate starvation. It just remains constant in the blood. It neither increases nor decreases, okay, and it just remains constant for that period of time. And whereas other things like hydroxybutyrate and fatty acid, they increases by larger amount, providing the energy to our body. So now in prolonged starvation, as I said, okay, in intermediate starvation there is fatty acid increase in the body, there is hydroxybutyrate increase in the body. So fatty acid increasement means increasement of the acetyl coenzyme A, okay, increasement in the acetyl coenzyme A, but which goes for the TCA cycle, okay. But prolonged starvation, that is for 3 weeks, okay, or more than 20 days of prolonged starvation, what happens is that more and more acetyl CoA is being produced by this fatty acid metabolism, and more acetyl coenzyme A means that this excess acetyl coenzyme now gets diverted from TCA cycle to ketone synthesis. Did you understand? Now, okay, so let me tell you once again. Now our body has started to starve. Glucose concentration is constant through intermediate starvation and prolonged starvation. It has declined, but that declined amount is constant. Now fatty acid oxidation and hydroxybutyrate level has increased in a larger folds like 50 and 6 folds. After that, fatty acid metabolism means fatty acid oxidation means synthesis of the elevated acetyl coenzyme A. Now this is acetyl coenzyme A. What happens? It goes for a TCA cycle for production of energy. But if there is more and more acetyl CoA produced in the body, because fatty acid oxidation will increase by 6 folds. Okay, then what happens that ketone acetyl coenzyme A, instead of going for TCA cycle, it gets diverted for ketone synthesis. For ketone synthesis, and the amount of ketone in the body increases during the prolonged starvation. It continues to increase and increase during intermediate and prolonged starvation. But as the starvation goes longer for 20 days, it goes for a plateau stage. It goes for a plateau stage about 8 millimole per liter. It just reaches a plateau. Now the ketone, okay, ketone is neither, it won't increase, but it will remain stable, that is for 8 millimole per liter. And after this, what the thing that will happen is not fatty acid metabolism, but now the muscles, the protein from our muscles, okay, the amino acids from our muscles will be utilized. The amino acids precursor from amino acid precursors in the muscles are degraded, muscle protein is degraded, okay, so that energy can be provided from them. Okay, muscles protein are now started to degrade to provide the energy, because ketone synthesis of ketone in the body has now reached a plateau. It has been excessively produced and excessively produced. Okay, this is one scenario about the fatty acid metabolism. What happens when there is excessive fatty acid metabolism in the prolonged starvation? Okay, ketone bodies in synthesis increases, and later on after 20 days that also reaches a plateau phase, that is 8 millimole per liter. Now there is hydroxybutyrate that is also increased in our body. We have learned that hydroxybutyrate has increased by 50-fold. This hydroxybutyrate now goes in our brain to provide energy for brain. But what happens is that this hydroxybutyrate in the brain, okay, it causes the increase in oxidation. When there is utilization of hydroxybutyrate in brain, it causes the oxidation in the brain, by which the brain starts utilizing less amount of glucose, and it starts getting dependent on hydroxybutyrate. Okay, when the rise in the hydroxybutyrates leads to increase in the oxidation by the brain, which reduces the rate of glucose utilization by this organ, that is brain, from 100 gram to 10 gram. Okay, from 100 gram to 10 gram. Now the situation is very worst. Okay, situation is really worst. Now brain has also stopped utilizing glucose in a very less amount, and hydroxybutyrate is taking place in the brain for providing energy. Okay, so this is the scenario now. Now finally the death has arrived. How? Because everything has depleted. As I said, the ketone synthesis has reached a plateau phase. Now more ketone synthesis can occur. Okay, can occur. Glycogen has, in the very initial stage, it had given up. Now protein also has already, ketone says that okay, now I cannot synthesize more amount of energy. Fat, the level of the fat store has depleted in a very large amount. Now fat is also unable to 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 provide energy. This whole fuel reserve have been depleted completely, and hydroxybutyrate in the brain causes the oxidation, which causes the brain to utilize less amount of glucose. After all these things, brain now starts going to the muscles and tissues, okay, and it starts Okay, it goes to the muscles and tissues, and it causes the breakdown of the protein in them. Okay, it causes the breakdown of the protein in them. But you know very well, these muscles and these tissues, they are made up of proteins, and more than breakdown of more than 50% of protein means death. After that, the body will completely stop functioning. Okay, so to provide the glucose for the brain, the breakdown of protein in the muscle and other tissue increases, and loss about 50% of the body protein is not compatible with the life. So exact cause of death, we can say that yes, breakdown of protein is increased, and then brain cannot have excess energy in the body, then brain dies and we die. But there is no any definite exact cause. Okay, so there are few things that happens after prolonged starvation, after all these mechanisms. Is First of all is loss of the myofibril protein. Okay, so the loss of the myofibril protein, as I said, from organs and muscles. Myofibrillar protein, okay, myofibrillary protein. So what it does is, from the diaphragm and intercostal muscles, limits the ability to cough, to reduce the efficiency of fluid removal, and that results into pneumonia and also low level of antibodies, and we get susceptible to various diseases. And when we are very susceptible to diseases, when we are very fragile, weak, okay, and then we are definitely, we can be killed by even common cold, we can die by common cold. So see, our body becomes really weak. Okay, every proteins, every fibers in the body starts to degrade to provide energy to the brain, and during that process they are becoming weak, and the mechanisms are getting weaker and weaker, and for thus they will not be able to function properly. And if they are not able to function properly, obviously they are going to stop, they are going to make us weak. Okay, so this is what the one reason we can say that, okay, what happens after the prolonged starvation and why we die. The next reason that you can say is that there is deficiency of amino acid also, because there is protein degradation. Now, deficiency of amino acid means low level of the albumin protein, and this means that there is the increased blood viscosity. Okay, the increased blood viscosity due to the imbalance in the colloidal osmotic pressure. Okay, imbalance in the colloidal osmotic pressure, and this causes heart to pump blood difficult. It causes difficult for heart to pump the blood. Okay, it was difficult for the heart to pump the blood. So everything is necessary. Okay, and this is whole about the starvation process. I have tried my best to explain you in a very simpler form, very easier form. I have not gone to the mechanisms in liver, in mechanisms in adipose tissue, mechanisms in skeletal muscles, kidney and liver. So I have just mentioned them all together, that what is the actual concept of starvation. To know the actual concept, you should definitely watch this video to know how this process goes. Then you can go to your book and go with this, relate this all process with the different organs, and you can make the chart about the metabolic changes during the starvation.